So, as discussed earlier, I'm going to talk about this basic concepts of earthquake risk mitigation. But before that, in one or two slides, I will give a brief introduction about NIDM. What we do at NIDM is we are basically a training capacity building, number of training programs in different modes. And other capacity building activities. So a lot of things are there. We do research, we do publication, we do documentation of various disaster events, and lot of information is already available. As far as structure of NIDM is concerned, we have it was established in 1995 as National Center for Disaster Management as a part of IITA, Institute of Public Administration. And then we were made the National Institute of Disaster Management in 2003 and 2005 Disaster Management Act. Through that, we were made as a statutory organization of the Government of India. And we have two campuses, one in Delhi, one in Vijayawada. Both the campuses are under construction. We have 6 academic divisions and 21 centers. And we have, in addition to that, other functional centers. And Executive Director is the head of the organization. So this is in brief about the thing. So now I start my main presentation about basic concepts of earthquake risk mitigation. Only one thing is, Walia Saab, you have to tell me the time limit. How much time I have to continue? So it's now 11:50. So how long I have to continue? Okay, so you just let me know when you want me to stop, so that give me 5 minutes breather so that I can complete my presentation. So I have divided it into 3 parts. I'm introducing disaster management and earthquake risk, and then basic terminology related to that, and then risk mitigation strategy. And for the participants, I may be slightly faster considering the time constraint, because slightly longer time we have taken in inaugural part, and Walia Saab come for another interesting topic on earthquake risk mitigation. So as far world is concerned, this is the natural hazard map of the world. And you see that this portion under the rectangle is belongs to us, and you see that all possible hazard or all possible colors in this map are available within this rectangle. Means that we are prone to earthquake, cyclone, flood, landslides, and whatnot. Everything is in our plate. So we are well blessed hazard point of view, but it's just the one part. It's not the end of the story. We have to start learning how to live with these hazards. So this is the thing, this is the task, this is the activity which we have to involve ourselves into this. So we have to learn this art of disaster risk mitigation and start living with these hazards. So as far as India is concerned, we are having, as I told, all possible hazards are there. We are prone to earthquakes, floods, cyclones. We are due to that long coastline. We are prone to droughts, hilly terrains like northeast, Kashmir, eastern and western Ghats, then coastal areas, Ghats and Ghats as well as hilly terrains are prone to landslides, avalanches, hailstorm, cloud bursts, and whatnot. Then tsunamis are there in the coast along with cyclones. So this is the thing. And you see, as far the hazard profile is concerned, we are having the macro level hazard maps already available. I'm going to discuss about this earthquake map again when touching the earthquake part. So in addition to that, we have flood hazard map, we have cyclone hazard map, we have landslide hazard map, we have droughtless map. And you see, this is the most colorful map of the country, where no part is safe from one type of hazard or the other. So we are highly prone to different types of hazards. As far disasters are concerned, at national level, struggle is continuing. So we are facing floods right now. We have just faced 2 cyclones, just within 2 months, 1.5 months. Earthquakes is a regular phenomena, as we are discussing since morning. Droughts keep on happening. Just a few weeks back, we were in that situation. Landslide season is just starting. And besides all those things, we are in COVID-19 times. So this is the scenario at national level as of now. So you see, we are highly disaster prone. And at a given particular moment, several types of hazards are prevailing in one part or the other. So this is the thing. and COVID is continuously happening from the country. So with this background, I just take you to what is an earthquake. Earthquake is just the shaking of the earth, and earth shakes when I move, earth shakes when vehicle is passing by, but those are very small type of shaking. But when we are talking about earthquakes, damaging earthquakes, so earthquakes are due to some phenomena which is happening beneath the earth's surface and which can shake us seriously and severely, and which can impact our infrastructure as well as our all these things. That is called an earthquake. Violent shaking of earth is the earthquake, which is having the forces involved which can impact our built form. What can happen in earthquake? So after an earthquake, you can see what is going. So you can see that different parts of the earthquake country are impacted by the earthquakes. And through this picture, what I want to show is that earthquakes are so powerful phenomena that they take place in one part of the country and the entire nation and the neighboring parts are impacted. So this is the impact or the forces involved in this earthquake phenomena. So you see, this is Gujarat earthquake 2001. It happened in near Bhuj town, and you see the entire country was shaken. And when country is shaking, so built environment, built form, built infrastructure, social fabric, economy, everything is impacted. So this is the misery with related to the earthquakes. They are so serious and critical type of hazard that they have no mercy on weaker structures. So this is the thing. And one of the aim of this program is that we want to highlight how earthquakes are impacting and what we can do for reducing the impact of those earthquakes. Impact on built environment, you can see. So this is a Bhuj earthquake picture. You can see that this is going to be the scenario in case of a severe earthquake happening in the villages and towns and urban centers. So this is nothing new, and this can happen to any one of us and any one of these towns and villages and cities. So you can't locate a single structure which is a disaster or which has remained intact. So this is the misery of big earthquakes. And to our buildings, you can see individual level buildings. Several impact is taking place. Buildings are then, as Edie was mentioning, we have to build the response capacity, and we have to be ready for this. In addition to that, all those mitigation measures. So this is one of the very common type of construction practices where we have ground open stories on the ground floor for parking and other purposes. And this could be the phase and fact of the thing. So impact on life supporting system. So as I was talking about the infrastructure, you can see that impact on life supporting system is also going to be impacted. Our bridges, and especially the hilly terrains, the entire northeast, Kashmir, hilly terrains of Uttarakhand, and the Ghats in east side and west side of our coastal area. So this is going to be the high impact on earthquakes on the life supporting infrastructure. The structures not only above the ground, structures beneath the ground are also impacted. So cities like Delhi and other cities have gas pipe supply lines. So if something is happening to gas supply line, petrochemical supply lines, what is going to be the fate of those things? So you can very well easily imagine it. Then our life is over dependent on the luxuries of electricity and communication network. So if communication is impacted, light is impacted, the power sector is impacted, see that the entire system is collapsing. So even communication is impacted. As far as communication is concerned, you see we are over dependent on the mobile phones of late. Telecommunication systems are so how long is a mobile phone is going to support? So this is a big question every one of us need to ask. How much power support we need and how long this power system is going to be restored. So in case of these cyclones, we have seen the power sector took few months, if not the weeks, to get restored. So are we mentally prepared to be without communication, without power, and without communication for several weeks? So this is one aspect of the thing. Then, as far as the earthquake scenario is concerned, you can see that entire country is divided into 7 zones, and This is almost the history for almost 200 years. And you can see that in the last 200 years, we are having 200 plus years. This is the total number of earthquakes which are taking place. So, 7 seismic zones, we can divide ourselves into this. And as far this part is concerned, this one, uh, this is our central part, which covers Delhi as well. And you see Delhi, we are also having some earthquakes, and plains of UP and Bihar are also having. Earthquake is such a phenomena that they are happening for billions of years, and due to that plate tectonic theory, because I'm focusing on this strategy part in detail. So we are moving in this north direction. We were here in 71 billion years ago in advance in Antarctica, and we have traversed this much of distance in 71 billion years ago, and we are striking that Eurasian plate here, which is a big one, which we can't push, and that's why we are going to reap that. I will tell about that as well. And due to this phenomena, Himalaya is still rising. So this is the thing in brief, and Himalaya Sam may explain further in this presentation on these aspects. And when we are talking about this, so these are called the plate boundaries according to plate tectonic theory, and this our plate boundaries like this, and major earthquakes do take place here. So it's like more explanation is coming at later point. As far as that seismic zoning map of India is concerned, you see that the same pattern of earthquakes you can visualize here along our plate tectonic boundary, where the major earthquakes will take place. And based on this, we have devised this seismic zoning map of India, which is divided into 4 zones: Zone 5, Zone 4, Zone 3, and Zone 2. And based on the zoning and other requirements and intensity which we can feel in these zones, you can see these 4 zones have been classified. And you see that entire northeast, North Bihar, Pithauragarh area of Himachal, Kullu Valley, Kangla Valley, and Kashmir Valley, and Kutch area, and Andamans. These are the Zone 5. Delhi is in Zone 4, and some other important towns are in Zone 3 as well. So this is the hazard map of India, and this is the macro level map. If we are going to city level planning, we need the microzonation, and that's why we have requested Shri O.P. Mishra ji, Dr. O.P. Mishra, and he's going to talk about not the macro level, that country level. He's going to talk what microzonation can do in mitigating the impact of this. This is the macro zoning map, and we are going to talk about that. Based on this, you can see that earthquakes are happening all around the country. So we have already discussed about this. These are few of the earthquakes which has this. As I told in my introductory remark, that these are the earthquakes which has already taken place. That 8 plus magnitude earthquakes which had taken place at national level. Similarly, you can see that earthquakes is such a common phenomenon throughout the country. We are facing these earthquakes, and you see no part is safe from earthquakes. So we had Latur at number 3, then we have Jabalpur at number 4. We have Andamans and those hilly terrains at Bhuj. So no part is safe from earthquakes. So this is some of the recent earthquakes which had taken place at national level. And in addition to that, as I told, earthquakes which are not happening within our political boundary or physical boundary, you can see which are also impacted. As I told, Aceh earthquake 2004, Kashmir earthquake 2005, Nepal earthquake 2015. These earthquakes impacted us seriously, and this is a serious concern that we have to take care of events as well. What are the terminology associated with the earthquakes? So in brief, I will touch. I will go slightly faster. So the thing is, earthquakes when do occur? Many theories are there, like, where mythological stories are there. Like in India, we have that Sheshnag and Nandi, that Shivji's bull. So earth is resting on his nest, and so horn, and when he's tired and we shift the earth from one horn to the other, so it shakes. So some mythology is there. So means, what does that indicate? That people are much aware about all those things, and that's why they are able to evolve some traditional wisdom as well. And we have requested Vai Singh Saab to touch upon those aspects as well, so that we can know that what is the tectonic theory. These theories are like elastic demand theory, that earthquake come and strain energy accumulate, earthquake comes, it releases the energy and it again accumulated. And plate tectonic theory I touched upon earlier as well. So plates are, Earth is made up of big plates, those are constant in motion, and due to this motion they are exerting some pressure on the plate boundaries, and due to that stress built up at certain point, those plates break at particular point, and that generates the earthquake. So this is in brief about the plate tectonic and scientific reasons for earthquake occurrence. So this is the same plate boundary map which we have shown. Our plate, Indian plate, is moving into that north direction at a speed of 5 seconds. We are pushing that Eurasian plate. Being the big plate, the Eurasian plate, we can't push that. So we are going to move that, and that's why Himalaya is rising. So these are different type of boundaries are there, different type of motions are taking place, convergent boundaries, divergent boundaries, and cross boundaries. So this phenomena is taking place, and these are the same map meeting. They are generating a lot of earthquakes. So earthquake, what is happening is earthquake of wave, primary waves and secondary waves. So I'm not going into detail. We will take some time. Maybe Walia Saab is going to touch this when he's talking about the early warning system of earthquake risk mitigation. So this is the phenomena. Primary waves move faster than the secondary waves, and that's why we are using this difference of arrival of P waves and S waves on at any source, and we are using these time difference for making early warning. So this is the same thing. P waves move faster than S waves and arrive first on that and the secondary waves. And when that waves are coming, so they are impacting our build form, and structure is in inertia form, and they are creating those that inertia, and the building is collapsing. If it is not designed and constructed as per laws for mitigating the impact of that shaking. So it is as simple. You have to construct your built form, built environment, your houses, everything for facing the shaking, at least in zone 4, 5, 3, and so that you can reduce the damage better. So this is the phenomena, and why Simsab is going to cover all these things in detail. Seismograph and seismogram. So but these are very commonly used terms. Seismograph is that instrument which is used to measure the earthquake, and seismogram is that cardiological map of the earth. So this is the thing which we receive from the seismographs. So these are some modern seismographs. So we are using all these things, and this type of map is available. This some earthquake has a minor earthquake has taken place. When big earthquake is taking place, shaking is so severe that it cover the entire page. So these is rotating drum, and these are the things which are marking all this. So this is the earthquake. That focus and epicenter. Epicenter is the place on the Earth's surface beneath which that shaking that has originated, that fault has been broken. So, and that point is called focus, and epicenter is just above that point is the epicenter. And at a particular distance, say, how much is the epicentral distance from Shillong to Guwahati? So that distance is called, if earthquake is originating in Shillong, that is the epicentral distance in Guwahati. So this is the. Then how to locate an earthquake, you have to do something. But now modern instrumentation, you have to you can do it very easily. After every earthquake, you have a main shock, you have foreshocks as well, and most of the time foreshocks sometimes. But after a major earthquake, aftershocks is an integral part of a big earthquake. So when a big earthquake is taking place, be ready to face aftershocks as well. And your structures are designed to face the main shocks, and they are able to Can we mute all, please? When major earthquake is taking place, your building or your infrastructure facility has taking the shock and building has survived, but it's not necessary that after shocks that building may survive. So you have to be extra cautious after a big major earthquake. So we are going to discuss about that. And sometimes a large number of smaller earthquakes to happen in a smaller area, like we were discussing. Walia Saab may clarify in his talk. I will raise this. Can you mute all, please? It's a lot of disturbance. Earthquake swarm is smaller earthquakes are happening over a small and you can identify those which is the main shock after a core shock. So this is happening and earthquakes based on the depth of focus, you can determine shallow focus, intermediate focus, or deep focus earthquake. Definitely, shallow focus earthquakes are much dangerous, and as the depth increases, the severity of the earthquake is also increasing. Magnitude and intensity, these are the two very commonly used terms. Magnitude is the measure of the size of the earthquake and the energy released in an earthquake. And it's measured on Richter scale in general, and there are other scales as well. I'm at least touching those. And you can see various type of magnitude, but the most level and local level magnitude can be measured on Richter scale. So this is in brief about for the time being. Then intensity is the measure of the impact of the earthquake on the built form. So as we move away from the source of the earthquake, epicenter of the earthquake, impact generally reduces, but sometimes, depending on local conditions, it may increase as well. But intensity is the measure of the impact. Isothermal lines showing the same level of intensity, so are the isothermal lines. Various scales, we are using an SK scale, and you can see different how to define, in Delhi, we can have this intensity 8 shaking, and you can see how it's going to impact all those things. So you can see impact earlier, smaller intensities, it's not that damaging, but at larger intensity, it's going to be quite severe shaking and taking a lot of impact on all of us. What are the type of hazards associated with the earthquake? You can see earthquakes are basically having two types of hazards, primary hazard and secondary hazards associated with it. Primary hazards are ground shaking and surface faulting, and secondary hazards are landslide, liquefaction, post-earthquake fires, and so on. So these are the main threats associated with the earthquake, and let's see how these are doing. So when primary hazard, ground shaking is taking place, if your infrastructure, your facilities, your built form, your houses are not designed and constructed to face that shaking, to absorb that shaking, you are going to have that impact on this. So all these things are going to include all those infrastructure facilities which are not disaster safe, designed and constructed. And then surface faulting is taking place. Surface is faulting, and this is one very famous picture. It happened in 1819 Bhuj earthquake. It is called Allahabad, which has developed a mound for almost 100 km long and 1 meter high. So you can see, so its natural barrier has been created by that earthquake, and very famous thing. And other forms, it may subside, it may pass by. So all these can happen during that surface. So you can very well visualize what type of fate is going to be of that facility which is constructed or built on this. So you can very well understand that we have to be extra cautious while planning our land use. And that's why this microzonation is going to play a big role in reducing the impact and mitigating the impact of the earthquake. So this is the thing that we have planned to touch upon that aspect. Definitely you shall be aware about. Then if some infrastructure is located on like this dam in the Chichi earthquake happened in Taiwan. So surface faulting break your best of the infrastructure facilities. So this dam collapsed in Chichi earthquake in Taiwan. So secondary hazards are equally dangerous. Landslides, earthquake can trigger landslides, and landslides can block those rivulets, can create that temporary damming, and due to that damming, when dams are bursting, they can create flash flood as well. So landslides are equally dangerous in case of an earthquake scenario. Liquefaction is a phenomena where liquid, that soil will start behaving like the liquid. Its bearing capacity reduces, and whatever is existing on the ground, it start sinking or tilting due to that unequal distribution of building load. Unless we have taken proper soil modification, soil training, and other methods to counter this impact of liquefaction. And post-earthquake fires are equally dangerous, as I told, that in case of gas leakage, not on the city, but at individual household level. And in those rural areas where we are using some combustible material. So fire is a real hazard. And you see that fire is such a common hazard in our urban settings, in our rural settings, in our village setting, in our forest. And you see that Assam fire is going on for quite some time. So fire is such a constant hazard. And in case of an earthquake, it increases manifold. Tsunami devastation we have already seen. So tsunami is a real issue which we have to take very seriously. So this is going to be the fate in case of if soil is going to liquefy. And soil, it generally liquefaction will take place near the water bodies where loose sand is available, water table is very high, and due to that shaking, consolidation take place and water flows out. So, and in this process, we lose the bearing capacity of the soil, and buildings start sinking and tilting, and all those phenomena take place. So this is landslide. Everyone, most of us are aware about what type of things are happening in landslides. So rivers are blocking and the flash flood rising. Post-earthquake fires, there are several incidences in the history of earthquake risk mitigation. You can see this is Tokyo fire, where more people killed in fire than the main earthquake shock. San Francisco earthquake 1906 burnt the entire city. So those are the landmark fire instances. As recent as the 1995 Kobe earthquake, we had a lot of fire incidences in Kobe city as well. Tsunami is a common thing. We have just seen that what type of dirty dance it can play when 20 to 30 countries were impacted in 2005. It's the international disaster, and many disaster impact. Many 2-3 lakh people were killed in that. And that is one of the major hazards associated with the earthquakes. So let's talk about the earthquake risk mitigation strategy, which is basically depend on earthquake, likelihood of earthquake. Based on this, as I told, hazard-prone areas have been identified, and we know that what are the type of hazards is prevailing, like in Delhi, we are in zone 4, and it also combines with the other parameters like local site conditions, like how earthquake is going to behave, our soil is going to behave during that shaking, and stability factors like type of material has been used, what type of technology has been used, how we are maintaining, and how old is the building, then population density, then land use planning, and time is very critical. So all these parameters define the risk of earthquake and what type of damages can occur in so this is the thing, and let's see how to mitigate the impact of earthquake risk. Can you unmute all, please? So we have again four steps of earthquake risk mitigation strategy. I will cover in brief about all those things, like prediction and forecasting. We have a full-fledged lecture on this, but as far predicting and forecasting is concerned, we are not able to 100% master the art of predicting and forecasting the earthquake. Though we have a small window of earthquake early warning, a small window, as Executive Director and IDM was mentioning, that 17-second window of early warning was issued. So I will talk about, we have a full lecture on this, so two gentlemen to cover on these aspects. Development of earthquake early warning system, though it's very nascent, though some positivity is there, but a very small window is there. Then we have to go for the only method for earthquake risk mitigation is so development control and earthquake safe construction and disaster safe or earthquake safe, earthquake resilient infrastructure need to be built. And the only way to do that is use building codes and guidelines, go for good construction practices. Built environment should be disaster safe, earthquake safe, and those buildings which are already existing, go for retrofitting and start the retrofitting of those critical infrastructure facilities. Those are already there. So this is the thing through which we have to do that. But as you know that neither we can construct all new buildings earthquake safe. It's a big task at national level. Nor we can't retrofit to do all those things. So simultaneously, we have to be safe for the consequences. We have to start preparing for the consequences. So this is in brief about all those things. Then there are so many other things through which these two parts are the structural components, and there are so many other things non-structurally we can reduce the impact, which our eminent speakers in the inaugural part, especially Ian IDM, told that you have to build the capacity of the locals, generate the awareness. They should be aware how to build, what type of building they need in that local environment, type of precautionary measures they have to adopt. So these are the things. Then land use planning at city level. So you need to identify which soil is going to be liquefied, where is the line, so that it should not jump like that when earthquake is taking place. That surface faulting should not take place. Then, so these are the two things which very easily can be identified with the help of experts. And again, if our land use planning is there, then we can do that. Then improve our response capacity, which is I have already spoken. Communicate communicate the risk to the local people. Be aware that what type of risk they are living in. So not only the people, but all stakeholders, the administration. The administrator should be aware that how to manage the earthquake disaster and all those things. So this is the early warning system is located in our building at in New Delhi on 6th floor under the NDRF headquarters, but it's for internal use only. So and what can you a few seconds for which early warning is available. So you can take protect yourself in those things. And, you can take some measures if the things. So a long way we have to go in making early warning system in the public domain. So that, but several countries are already doing this, like Taiwan, like Japan, like Mexico, and many more countries have already developed this system, and they have linked mobile application based. When earthquake is coming a particular magnitude level, then mobiles rings and then this is the building where we are located in Delhi, near Jantar Mantar, near Connaught Place. So, on 6th floor of this, we have that system. How to build the earthquake safe resilient infrastructure? You can see that same building is what is the fate after that earthquake. This is Nepal. This is earlier pictures. So you can see what type of fate is going to be there in case of an earthquake like this building. So you will see when we are talking about tomorrow all these aspects. So you can see, just keep on watching those damages which are going to occur. This is a very particular type of construction practices which we are following at national level. We keep this ground story open, and Bhuj earthquake, this performance of this build form was not very satisfactory. So we have to overcome the solution of this. So this is going to be the fate of this type of building, and this is going to be the impact and what you are supposed to do. But you have to do some shear walls or some cross bracings. But again, this is the structural part, structural component. You have to consult the structural engineers for it. So this is not layman's task. So structural engineers need to be done. Like we have designing of the building, and execution and construction of the building. These are the professional jobs, need to be done by the professionals. Same is your retrofitting. Retrofitting has to be done under good supervision. So many things we are going to discuss during this course of 3 days. So many poor construction practices are prevailing at national level. So you can't identify the columns, the beams, and after finishing, you can't even recognize what type of faults are there at the construction level. So shape plays a very important role. So you have to be regular shape buildings need to be there, and it should not be reverse pendulum type like this one. So it's not more stable. It's more stable. So you have to be there. Openings play a very important role within the building unless planned properly. So you have to take all those things into account. So take any shape. All shapes of buildings are available at national level. You keep on traveling different parts of the country, and you can see all those things. Architects are highly fascinated about. I know few of the architects are there. They are fascinated about giving shape and all those things. But when shape is perfectly all right, but you have to take extra caution when designing those buildings, and it should be done proper structural meaning design and execution. unless we do this. So all these things are there. So all shapes and sizes and all faults you can find out. And no column. So hanging columns and hanging beams is a very, very common phenomenon. And after finishing the product, you can't even visualize what is happening there. So retrofitting is a very important tool where you provide. What is retrofitting? Retrofitting is that providing additional strength to existing structures to face future earthquakes. So this is the thing which you have to take about the existing built environment. Again, a technical job, and a lot of advanced technologies are available, and we have to talk about a lot about this, and we have to take all those things, all those measures in proper perspective. The structural engineers, it's not the layman's, local mason can't do this. So you have to talk to some professional engineers and take their advice, and so that we can improve our thing. So retrofitting can be done in various methods. So we will discuss some other session in detail about retrofitting. But one of the most like this one. So base isolation technique is very popular, and at national level we have done at several places. So base need to be isolated, at least for important infrastructure like hospitals, which are critical in nature and which we are required immediately after a big disaster. So we have to take all these retrofitting measures, at least for critical infrastructure facilities, and we have to invest in making our infrastructure resilient. So local level, schools, this is one of the retrofitting in the schools. Some common techniques like you have to provide additional strength by putting the bands on inside and outside. So we'll discuss maybe some other time in detail about what to do when we are retrofitting. So these are we retrofitted from school, like this is it. This is again so many techniques and instruments can be used for retrofitting things. And then one most another important aspect which Executive Director of National Institute of Disaster Management was mentioning, that some local awareness about structural and non-structural things. So there is a components called structural component of the building and non-structural component of the building. So non-structural structural components are those components of the building which helps us in transferring the load on the building to the ground. And non-structural components of, and except those structural components, everything in the building is non-structural. Like our furniture, our doors, our windows, our TVs, our laptops, our computers, our dining table, kitchen ka saman, and everything. Everything is non-structural in nature. So, and you see that the non-structural components are causing the major injuries at least, and they are posing a big challenge. How to overcome those, which can be easily done with common sense and without assistance of highly technical or highly skilled structural engineers or highly skilled engineers. So we need to concentrate on fixing those non-structural elements in our houses. So you see that the false ceiling to lighting system to everything, doors, windows, your facade, your glasses, your windows, glass windows, your partition walls, everything is non-structural. It's more dangerous, as I told. So several post-earthquake studies have indicated that up to 50% of injuries are coming to non-structural hazards and falling hazards. And in the building, you can see so many things are non-structural, which we have already discussed about that. Staircases, water tanks, and so many things. Almost everything in this building is non-structural in nature, which is not helping us in transferring load to the ground, and gases and everything. So what to do this is that we have to fix all those non-structural elements, which we are also called the falling hazards in the building. So you have to fix the falling hazards so that at this time of shaking, they remain intact. They should not block your pathways. So this is the thing. Storage and cabinets. So what you have to do, like if something is keeping loose, so it may block your exit as well. So your TV, computers, your wall hangings, everything is going to be like that. So what to do? You fix all those things. Your some sturdy structure like walls and something like that, so that it should, during the shaking, it should not fall on you and should not block your pathway, exit routes. So this is something, your classrooms, your hospitals, everything is going to be like this. So you have to protect all those things. Should not. and disaster should not go into the secondary form, and earthquake shaking should remain earthquake shaking. And you can see in this room what type of hazards are there. So this is a very common sight in our schools and colleges. The school labs, you can see those are unprotected things. Libraries, our malls, you can see this picture from the mall. So many things are going to be there. Our households, like this. Then don't exit during the earthquake. One of the important do's and don'ts from the earthquake is be calm during the shaking. Don't rush outside. So this is the thing. You have to be there. So you can see that falling hazards can injure you. And in your household, in your vicinity, in your local environment, identify those elements which can fall down, and identify those and then try to fix it with some fixed structure, so that those should not fall and they should not injure. Or what to do if you can't fix it, relocate it. You know, and how to protect anchor bracing and all those things, you can do it within the walls and all those falling designs. So like a strap of TV on your fridge, on your falling hazards like balls, bottles and all those things in your kitchenettes, you can do the same thing. Your almirahs, your cupboards need to be fixed. Your pipes, every household, every facility is having a pipe. Pipes are going to be very, very dangerous. So you have to go for flexible piping system, develop that flexibility in the piping system. Your falling hazards, its pakka is going to be falling down and you have to be extra cautious. So you can get it designed, you can do it yourself, but definitely you have to invest some time and energy in your household, in your office rooms, in your local environment. You have to identify those facilities which are going to fall down and you have to take care of them. It's going to be your fate of the libraries unless you protect them. And what to do? You have to go for fixing those almirahs with the walls and put the string there. Yes, so you can save so many things. Almirahs. Then glass windows. So you have to put that lamination sheet on this so that if glass is shattering, it's not falling down. So many things you can do at local level. Opening of the doors. Generally, plan your exit in case of an emergency in your houses, in your local environment, in your offices, wherever you are there. Think about the exit plan before entering any building. So this is one of the basic do's and don'ts. So you have to identify those things. Every house should have an emergency exit. So its ball is now in your court. You have to do it. And doors generally should open outside so that you can easily push. Like in cinema halls, that is a fire requirement. Doors never open inside. So go for opening outside if you can do it easily. And if you are doing it now after fixing door which is opening inside and fixing it to outside, so that is called non-structural retrofitting as well. So you can non-structurally retrofit your house by adopting all those things. And never do this. Emergency exit locked. So you have planned some emergency exit and it should not be locked. And if it's locked, then you should give some coordinates where the key is. So be cautious and then drill it every time you are thinking about earthquake, drill it. Start talking about your family. So these are basic things for earthquake risk mitigation that you have to start taking precautions now. This is the time when you can start thinking about those things. So a lot of do's and don'ts which are coming to you. I'm not reading everything out. I have discussed many of those things. So these are some structural retrofitting, structural measures and non-structural measures. You have to do both. Get your structure, your local building evaluated with a structural engineer, and if need is, go for structural retrofitting. Otherwise, you can at least do some non-structural thing. Start talking about your earthquake plan with your family. During the earthquake, as I told, be calm, think about that. If you have the plan, implement that plan, which is in that particular room you are going to take the shelter. So plan it now. So this is the time where you can do it. So many things, do's and don'ts are coming. We will share as the values are told in the morning. So what to do is, what to do when you are inside, what to do when outside, what to do when you are in a moving vehicle. So generally, don't be on flyovers, don't be under tree or wires, don't be near to tall buildings. So these are some of the do's and don'ts you should be aware. If you feel shaking during the while driving, so stop the vehicle away from falling hazards like trees, wires, over bridges. So all those things which can collapse during the shaking, as I told earlier. So try to stop your vehicle if you feel it, but it's very difficult to feel while driving an earthquake. So if you feel it, stop on the side and safe place, which is away from all those things, as I told earlier. After the earthquake, what you have to do is you have to develop before earthquake that emergency plan of your family and emergency kit, which is should be with you when you are going out of your building or your local environment. Start discussion with your family in your local environment, with your colleagues in office environment. If earthquake can happen anytime, it may happen when you are at home, it can happen when you are in office. So be prepared for both the situations and plan it. So, and first thing is start talking about this. Unless you start talking it, don't be scared of earthquakes. Earthquakes, many countries, as I told earlier, have overcome this earthquake risk mitigation. Impact phenomena have reduced considerably. Not much damage is taking place, and we can also achieve it in our environment and all those things. As I told earlier, how to reduce the earthquake risk is stop increasing risk, means start constructing new buildings earthquake safe by adopting earthquake unacceptable risk. Whatever are listing for reckoning, if you can't do first two, then prepare for the consequences. Start planning how to deal the challenge of earthquake damage and all those things. Develop those plans as well. So this is the thing, and this is possible to. So I just conclude here. And Walia Sahab, if you are there, you can raise a few questions if we can identify. Otherwise, we can discuss at the later stage as well.
Yeah. Participants.
Professor Walia.
Dr. Amir Khan has given exhaustive and very elaborate view of the earthquake risk mitigation and procedures which are being adopted. So you might have been enlightened by his really exhaustive lecture. So I must thank Dr. Amir Ali Khan ji for giving such a nice lecture and to make all the people aware about different aspects of earthquake risk mitigation. Through his lecture, you will get complete overview of earthquake risk mitigation, and probably if you will follow, you will get comprehensive view. And if you follow 25%, 30% of it also will be a great help to the society. So I would like to request on your behalf, although Dr. Amir Khan is already requested also to send the PDF so that right now we can share the link, or so that we are able to share with the participants through email, so that they get enlightened and so that they are able to use the teaching or the material which is there used by you. Want to say something, Amir Khan ji?
Sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, sure. I will share. I have already told. You have already told in the beginning as well.
Yeah.
So we are sharing that. So I was just asking if one or two typical question is there, which I can answer now, or okay, or we can take it after your discussion.
Yeah, that's
both of them.
Yeah, there are a lot many questions in the chat box, and the team is working on making them in one tabular form so that we can discuss it. We can join some questions and we can discuss. But still,
sure.
But still, to break the monotony or the chain, if we can allow one person, that team does it is better, because they are compiling all the questions. So to me, if you agree, Amir Khan Sahab, we will start with my lecture so that the first phase of it can be